In the 2018 NBA draft, there were 12 trades that went down, and 3 of them involved players in the lottery. So in this video, I will give my thoughts on each trade and grade the trade for each team. Now, the first trade in the draft occurred between the Dallas Mavericks and the Atlanta Hawks. Dallas acquired Luka Doncic, and Atlanta acquired Trae Young and a 2019 protected first-round pick. The pick is protected 1 through 5 in 2019, 1 through 5 in 2020, 1 through 3 in 2021, 1 through 3 in 2022, and unprotected in 2023. Now let's start with my thoughts on Dallas. I really like this trade for Dallas. Now I think Luka Doncic is the second best player in the draft, and the Mavs got him with the third pick. He fits their team very well, and I don't even think the first round pick will be much in the future. The Mavs are rumored to be the favorites to land DeMarcus Cousins, and also the Pelicans are rumored to not offer DeMarcus Cousins the max contract that he wants in free agency. Now, I actually don't think that DeMarcus Cousins would propel the Mavs to the playoffs, but I do think they'll finish just outside the top 10 in the draft, and the first round pick won't be worth much. Even if they're somewhere near 10, like the 8th pick, I still think it's more than worth it for Luka Doncic. For those reasons, I'm giving this trade an A for the Dallas Mavericks. Now on to the Atlanta Hawks. I also like this trade for the Hawks, despite lots of people hating on this trade for the Hawks. In my opinion, this trade is exactly like Boston's trade last summer where they traded with the Sixers and got Tatum. In that trade, Boston acquired a future first-round pick when they selected a player that they were going to select anyway. Now, I don't think that the Hawks would have selected Young if they stayed at 3, but I think that they valued Young right below Doncic or even valued them the same. Because of this, they decided to acquire an extra first-round pick in the future and still select the player they wanted. Like I said, the pick probably won't be that good, and I think at best it'll be the 7th pick in next year's draft or the 10th pick in the year after. I'm going to give this trade a B for the Hawks for those reasons. The next trade in the draft involved the Charlotte Hornets and the Los Angeles Clippers. Charlotte acquired Miles Bridges and 2 future second-round picks, while the Los Angeles Clippers acquired Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now let's start with the Charlotte Hornets. I'm going to be honest, I'm not that big a fan of this trade. The Hornets need a lot of help, but they actually have some wings with Nicholas Batum and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist at the small forward position. I assume that the Charlotte Hornets are trading Kemba, and if so, they desperately need a point guard. If they keep Kemba, however, I do like this trade as they get the better player and someone who fits a little bit better than Gilgeous-Alexander. Still, though, I expect them to trade Kemba, in which case this trade doesn't make much sense. Miles Bridges has a much lower ceiling than Gilgeous-Alexander, and they only got 2 second-round picks, both of which are likely going to be around 40 to 45. And for these reasons, I'm going to give this trade a C+ for the Hornets. Now on to the Clippers. I absolutely love this trade for them. Not only do they get a guy with a much higher ceiling, they fit a position of need. Their point guard situation currently is Milos Teodosic and Pat Beverley, but Teodosic has a player option that is only partially guaranteed, and Beverley's contract is non-guaranteed. Beverley is also coming off of a season-ending injury and may not be 100% for the start of the regular season. I also think that it'd be helpful for Gilgeous-Alexander to come off of the bench for his first year, as I think he's too raw to start anyway. Bridges doesn't even fit their team anyway, as they already have more than enough shooting guards and small forwards. At shooting guard, they had Lou Will and Austin Rivers at the time of the trade. Williams just signed a 3-year, $24 million extension, and Rivers is the coach's son, and Doc has declined trades for Carmelo Anthony just to keep his son on the team. At small forward, they have Tobias Harris and Danilo Gallinari, both of which are key players on their team. They also managed to do this trade while only getting rid of 2 second-round picks, which is why I'm giving the Clippers an A on this trade. The next trade in the draft occurred between the 76ers and the Suns. Philadelphia acquired Zaire Smith and a 2021 first-round pick from Miami, while Phoenix acquired Mikal Bridges. Now let's start with the Sixers on this one. I really just don't understand this trade from either side, but it makes a bit more sense for the Sixers. Mikal Bridges is the perfect role player on the Sixers, and he's the perfect player for them. Trading him makes no sense. He also is much better than Zaire Smith, who is pretty raw but has major upside. If the Sixers are competing now, wouldn't they want the better player rather than take a risk on a raw talent? I also think that this trade is going to turn off a couple of free agents, specifically LeBron and Paul George. Mikal Bridges is the definition of a winner, and probably a player that LeBron or George wants to play with. He can knock down threes at an elite rate and defend the other team's best wings so they can take a play off. The extra pick is the only thing that saves this trade, as I think Miami is on the way out of the playoffs and towards the bottom of the league, which I think will happen in about 2 or 3 years, which is right on time with this pick. I think the pick will be between 5 and 12, and that's the only reason I'm giving the Sixers a C- instead of a worse grade. Now on to the Suns. This makes absolutely no sense in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, Mikal Bridges is easily the best player in this trade, but I just don't understand why the Suns would do this. Josh Jackson is essentially just Mikal Bridges, but a better defender and a bit worse of a shooter with higher upside. Bridges really is just another wing that is very similar to Jackson and somewhat similar to TJ Warren. I know I said that a team could never have enough 3-and-D wings, but that doesn't really apply when you're one of the worst teams in the NBA. Zaire Smith gives this team an ultra-athletic wing who not only has an extremely high ceiling, but is much different than their current wings. Also, the Suns aren't winning anytime soon and should have no problem with taking a low-floor, high-ceiling type of player, as they just did so last year when they drafted Dragon Bender. I don't see Bridges getting many minutes on this team because of Josh Jackson, TJ Warren, and Marquise Chris. The first round pick, however, is what kills this trade. Obviously, the Sixers wouldn't get rid of Bridges for nothing, but I don't get why the Sixers would do this trade when it meant getting rid of a likely top 10 pick. I'm giving the Suns a D+ on this trade because of those reasons. The next trade in the draft occurred between Portland and Sacramento. Portland acquired Gary Trent Jr., while Sacramento acquired 2 future second-round picks from the Blazers. Now let's start with the Blazers on this trade. I really like this trade for the Blazers. For starters, I really like Trent and I think he should have been a first round pick. Some might think that there is an issue with him and Turner at the backcourt together as there aren't enough minutes for both, but Turner won't even be playing much backup guard. This year, the most commonly used lineup for the Blazers was Lillard, McCollum, Turner, Aminu, and Nurkic. This was used for 534 minutes, and the second most used lineup was the exact same, except Maurice Harkless played instead of Evan Turner. That lineup saw 441 minutes together, and the next most used lineup only got 165 minutes together. The Blazers don't have a good power forward, which means they play with 2 wings a lot. This leaves a lot of minutes for their backup guards. Speaking of their backup guards, Shabazz Napier and Pat Connaughton, they are both free agents this summer. This gives Trent the role that he deserves. The 2 second-round picks aren't going to be worth much, and should be probably around 50 to 56. This also saves them a bit of money as Trent's contract will be less than the minimum, which I assume is what Pat Connaughton or Napier would sign for. For those reasons, I'm giving this trade an A for the Blazers. Now on to the Kings. I really don't like this trade for the Kings. As a young and rebuilding team, they need the better pick rather than the 2 mediocre picks. They do have Iman Shumpert and Garrett Temple at backup shooting guards, but Shumpert didn't play a single minute last year, and Temple could be gone as he has a player option this summer and could decline it in order to join a contending team. This gives Trent some minutes on the team, and I think he could easily be their future 6th man or at least a bench player. I wasn't fond of the trade last year when they traded the 10th pick for the 15th and 20th picks because I think the Kings need a franchise player rather than 2 role players. Obviously, Gary Trent is not a franchise player, but I just think they'd be better off keeping the better player. The second round picks they're getting back will probably be between 50 and 56, like I said, which isn't worth it in my opinion. For these reasons, I'm giving this trade a C- for the Kings. The next trade was between the Orlando Magic and Denver Nuggets. Orlando acquired Justin Jackson and a future second-round pick, while Denver acquired Jared Vanderbilt. Let's start with the Magic on this one. Justin Jackson is a 6'7 wing with a 7'2" wingspan, and is already a solid defender. A somewhat tall player with a long wingspan who plays on the wing and can play defense. Does this remind you of anyone? This is literally every wing on the Magic. Jonathan Simmons, Jonathan Isaac, Wesley Iwundu, and even Evan Fournier are somewhat tall and have long wingspans. Justin Jackson also had a major shoulder injury this season and was limited to only 11 games, in which he struggled mightily. His field goal percentage dropped from 44 to 37, and his three-point percentage dropped from 44 to 25. Jared Vanderbilt is probably the best rebounder in the draft, but the Magic already have Mo Bamba and Bismack Biyombo. I do think that Jared Vanderbilt doesn't fit on the team, but neither does Justin Jackson. The extra second round pick is pretty cool, and so that's why I'm going to give this trade a C for the Magic. Now on to the Denver Nuggets. I'm pretty neutral on this trade for the Nuggets. They could certainly use a 3-and-D wing with Wilson Chandler only on a 1-year deal and Porter, who is a major question mark, as their only other wing. However, I do think Jared Vanderbilt will help as their rebounding isn't that great. Millsap isn't a great rebounder, and neither is his backup Trey Lyles. Vanderbilt is pretty intriguing as he could potentially play the small forward position, which would help them a lot. All in all, I'm giving them a B- on this trade. I think it was a fine trade, but I don't particularly love it by any means. The next trade occurred between the 76ers and the New York Knicks. Philadelphia acquired Travis Outlaw and a 2019 second-round pick, and the Knicks acquired Arnett Moultrie. Now, this trade doesn't need much reviewing. Outlaw last played in the NBA in 2014, and Moultrie last played in 2014 as well. Outlaw is already 33, while Moultrie is still 27. I really don't understand why the Knicks would waste a second-round pick on a guy that will probably not even make their roster. I'm giving this trade an A for the Sixers, and I'm giving the Knicks a C+. The next trade was between Philadelphia and Detroit. The Sixers acquired 2 future second-round picks, and Detroit acquired Kyrie Thomas. Let's start with the Sixers here. I kind of dislike this move for the Sixers. Thomas is an excellent shooter and a pretty good defender. He seems like a solid 5th guard for the Sixers, and maybe even could get some minutes. The 2 second-round picks should be okay. I'd expect anywhere from 40 to 50. I think the Sixers would have been better off holding on to Thomas rather than trading him, but it's not that bad. For those reasons, I'm giving the Sixers a B- on this trade. The Pistons could use a backup shooting guard, and Kyrie Thomas is 6'3 with a 6'10 wingspan, so we could play shooting guard. I think if he can bulk up and get a little bit stronger over the summer, he could play a good amount of minutes at shooting guard for the Pistons. Because of this, I'm giving this trade a B+ for the Pistons. The next trade is between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Dallas Mavericks. Philadelphia acquired Shake Milton, while the Mavs acquired Raymond Spalding and Kostas Antetokounmpo. Let's start with the Sixers. Shake Milton is a 6'6 point guard with an incredible 7-foot wingspan. Does this remind you of any Sixers point guard? Ben Simmons comes to mind, who is also crazy tall with an insane wingspan. Milton is an elite shooter, a pretty solid passer, and an average defender while having lots of potential. Raymond Spalding is a 6'10 power forward with a 7'5 wingspan, which allows him to be a good rebounder and a great defender. And he also is an below average 3-point shooter, but that will certainly improve once he gets into the NBA. Kostas is just a raw athlete. He's 6'10 with a 7-foot wingspan and freakishly athletic, but he's just blatantly bad at everything else. Personally, I would have stuck with Spalding, but it is really a toss-up, so I'm giving this trade a B for the Sixers. Now on to the Mavs. I think a lot of people see the name Antetokounmpo and immediately think that he's the next Giannis, when in reality he'll probably never play in the NBA. The Mavs do have a glaring hole at power forward, with Dirk retiring soon, and Harrison Barnes not being a natural 4. I think Spalding fits on this team better than Milton, and Kostas is a nice boom or bust guy. For those reasons, I'm giving this trade an A- for the Mavs. The next trade occurred between the LA Lakers and the Philadelphia 76ers. The Lakers acquired the 39th pick in the NBA draft, which was Isaac Bonga, and the 76ers acquired a 2019 second-round pick and cash. Now, this trade was done before the draft actually started, so that is something to note. Let's start with the Lakers on this one. Isaac Bonga is a 6'9 forward/guard with a 7-foot wingspan. He's a pretty good playmaker for his size and a solid defender. He's very similar to Ben Simmons in the sense that they're both very tall point forwards. The Lakers are a bit weak in the front court, as Kuzma is really the only good front court player under contract, although I do expect Julius Randle to re-sign. Their second-round picks next year should be around 45 to 52, and for those reasons, I'm going to give this trade an A for the Lakers. Now on to the Sixers. Bonga could have been a useful piece, but I don't think that they need him anymore now that they drafted Shake Milton. The second-round pick won't be worth much, but the extra cash is something. Because of that, I'm going to give this trade a B- for the Sixers. The next trade is between the Utah Jazz and Houston Rockets. The Jazz acquired Cash, and the Rockets acquired Vince Edwards. Let's start with Utah on this one. I'm never a big fan of just selling second-round picks because we know from recent memory that it can turn out bad. Edwards is a 6'8 forward with a 7-foot wingspan and a prototypical 3-and-D wing. He shot 40% from 3 in his final season at Purdue and is an average defender, and the Jazz could definitely use a 3-and-D wing. For those reasons, I'm giving this trade a D plus for the Jazz. It could be lower or higher, but we don't know the exact amount of cash that they received in the deal. After reports surfaced that Trevor Ariza was looking for a 4 or 5 year deal worth about $50 to $60 million, I think the Rockets started looking for his replacement, and Edwards is perfect. He's already 22, which is really the only concern for his game. For those reasons, I'm giving this trade an A for the Houston Rockets. The next trade occurred between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Charlotte Hornets. The Thunder got Hamidou Diallo, while it is still unknown what the Charlotte Hornets got in the deal. It is speculated that they got the 53rd and the 57th picks from the Thunder, but of course it is still unknown. Now let's start with the Thunder on this one. If the Thunder gave up the 53rd and 57th picks, then I really don't like this trade. The 53rd pick was Devin Hall, who is a 6'5 point guard who played pretty good defense and shot 43% from 3 at Virginia. The 57th pick was Kevin Hervey. Hervey is a 6'8 forward and a talented scorer and an average defender. Diallo was the 45th pick, and he's an extremely raw athlete standing at 6'5 with a 6'11 wingspan, and he's extremely athletic. He isn't that good of a player, however, he just has an extremely high ceiling. If the Thunder did give up the 53rd and 57th picks in this trade, then I'm going to have to give them a D plus for those reasons. Now on to the Hornets. Of course, the grade will be better if they got back the 53rd and 57th picks, but I still don't really like this trade. The Hornets are likely going to be trading Kemba, so in my opinion, I think they should have taken a boom or bust guy rather than a couple role players, and Diallo is certainly a boom or bust type of player. Now, if the Hornets got back the 53rd and 57th picks, I'm going to give them a B for this trade for those reasons. Now, the next trade was between the Atlanta Hawks and the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte acquired Devontae Graham, while the Hawks acquired a 2019 second-round pick and a 2023 second-round pick. Let's start with the Hornets here. I'm a big fan of Devontae Graham. Graham is a 6'1 point guard with very good skills. He isn't really bad at anything, and the only real knocks on him is that he's too small and he's too old, as he's already 23 and a half years old. The Hornets have a major hole at point guard with or without Kemba, and I think Devontae Graham is perfect for them. The second round picks are going to hurt because I think they'll be pretty high, but I still think that this is a good trade. For those reasons, I'm going to give the Hornets a B plus on this trade. Now on to the Hawks. They don't really need a point guard anymore as they drafted Young, so Graham doesn't fit on their team. The second round picks they got back will likely be anywhere from 34 to 40 in 2019, and it's too early to say for 2023, but probably top 15. For those reasons, I'm going to give this trade an A for the Atlanta Hawks. So those are the grades that I would give each team for all the trades that happened during the 2018 NBA Draft. Subscribe if you're new, leave a like if you've enjoyed, and comment down below what you think was the best trade of the draft.